Hello everyone. So I'm back with another video. I am doing another book review. I bought this book a few years ago, and I just a few recently, like probably a few months ago, just read it again, and it's called The Rival Queens by Nancy Goldstone. It's about Catherine de Medici and Marguerite de Valois, her daughter. And this is Catherine, as you can see all, and this is Marguerite. Catherine has a little more wrinkles than Marguerite, so that's how you know. Um, basically, Catherine de Medici was the Queen of France and was married to Henry II, of King of France, and Marguerite de Valois was she was the Queen of Navarre, and she was married to Henry IV, and then she eventually became Queen of France. The first time I read it, I was kind of a little, I just didn't understand it a little bit, but like that's the beauty of reading the book a second time. One day I was just like, you know what, why not? Because I haven't been to the bookstore in a while, so why not read it again? And I was just like, wow, there's a lot of things that I missed the first time I read it. It's like what I said, it's about Catherine de Medici and Marguerite Valois and their mother and daughter. Catherine de Medici, she was originally from Florence. Her mom was her mom was a French countess, but she married her father, who was from Florence, who was de Medici. The Medicis are very famous. This was before Italy was united, so there's Florence, there's Venice, and then so they weren't. I think like Italy was united more in the 1800s, more than like back then, because this was in like the 16th century. The 16th century, yeah. So it starts out with Catherine de Medici. Basically, at that point, the Medicis weren't really that popular. I mean, well, they weren't that as popular in Florence at that time. So, like, I think her grandfather was scrambling to get her to, because at that point her parents died of illness. So he was scrambling her. I think her grandfather was. I think it was her grandfather who was scrambling to get her married, to so she could be taken care of, because obviously she's still a Medici, so she can't marry just anyone. So they got somehow they got Henry II, and so well, they got Francois the First to confirm it. Francois was Henry's father. So she went to France, and they had to flee anyway, because like they were being targeted, because I guess the vendetta, and no one really, yeah, they just weren't popular at that time. I don't really know Italian history that well. So they had to flee, and somehow she got married to Henry II. He like, no one in the court liked her, in the French court liked her at all. And because she's a foreigner, French people didn't like foreigners at that time. They really didn't. I mean, they didn't even like Marie Antoinette, so like when she came. So, and we all know how that happened. We all know how she turned out. And if you don't know, Marie Antoinette is Austrian. So anyway, so she wasn't liked. She wasn't pretty. And her Italian accent stood out when she was speaking French. So she wasn't that good at French anyway, and then her Italian accent didn't help that either. So no one really liked her. And it's just like, yeah. And those times, like, your husband already has a mistress anyway, so it's just like, ugh. And turned out that he was Protestant and she was Catholic, because she's Italian. They're usually Catholic over there. So she was, so basically, but she did make friends with Francois first, who was her father-in-law, and they did bond over like poetry and intellect and stuff, and so he did like her, and he because she was she was in good cahoots with Francois the First. Henry she really had immunity, and so like the court had to like her basically, and so Henry II also had to like her too, because since like, oh, you're in good relations with my dad, I can't really do anything to get rid of you. But Henry II like would pay more attention to his mistress, and he was a lot older than her. So he was a lot older than him and her. So her name was Diane de Poitiers. He would let her wear the crown jewels. He would let her occupy the let her occupy vacation spots, really nice vacation spots, and castles and stuff like that. And so Catherine de Medici obviously got jealous, because one, she's sleeping with her husband, and two, she's getting a lot more praise. And then when Marguerite de Valois was born, Marguerite found a bond more to Diane than Catherine. So, but then when Henry II died, he died because on his birthday, and I remember I found this out a long, long time ago. I don't know why, but I just remember that. Even before I read this book, Henry II on his birthday wanted to joust, and he got hit in the eye with the jousting stick, and he died of infection. And an infection of the joust in the eye. So then when Henry II died, Catherine Medici, she was petty. She took all the jewels away from her. She banished her from court. It was just from Diane from court. So yeah, she was just like, you know what, you're done. And it's just, I think also the author of this book, she thinks that Catherine also just didn't like Marguerite because she was a little bit prettier than her. And it's just like, the thing is that the reason why it paints the book, I'm not going to tell you about the whole book, but the reason why I feel like Catherine de Medici just made this whole book, I mean, it's like villain, again, it's the rival queen, so it's just like, when I first read it, it was Catherine is the bad guy and Marguerite is the good guy, but it's just like they both did shady things. Catherine, she did a lot to, but she didn't like Marguerite because of, I don't know, there was just bad blood, because Marguerite wanted to be a Catholic because Diane, since Diane de Poitiers had an influence on, no, Diane, Marguerite wanted to be Protestant, but since Diane de Poitiers had a huge effect on Marguerite, she wanted to be Protestant, and again, Catherine was just like, I don't want my children being Protestant. I like Catholicism. So it's, there's a lot of scandal that goes on, and there's a lot of conniving and things, and Catherine's trying to get her sons on the throne, like Francois the First. Well, I mean, not Francois the First, but they named one of their children Francois, and he, if you know, there's a picture of him when he was young in the picture. Well, I think he died early, like when he was like 20, so that was the only picture of him. They only have a picture of him when he was young. But if you saw a picture of him when he was in his 20s and Marguerite when she was little, they were just like, oh yeah, the nose is very distinct and the cheeks are very distinct, and you would know they were brother and sister. Now I feel like I understand, like, you know how villains, like in movies, villains are so much better once you find, once they have a backstory. That's why, like, Joker has a backstory. That's why there's like Suicide Squad. Why Maleficent got her own movie. Why the Wicked Witch of the West got her own Broadway show. Like, it just makes it more attractive to humanize the bad guy. And it's just like, at the end of the day, who is really the bad guy? Because again, like I said, they both did some trifling stuff. I get why Catherine did her stuff, because it's just like, she was born into a high society family, but they were struggling to get power, and she had to flee, and she went to she was, I think she was, I don't know, 14 or 15 when she went to France, and nobody liked her, and people were even scheming to get her to, Henry II was even trying to get his chance to get rid of her, like, even like probably kill her. And so she only had Francois the First, who was her father-in-law, but when he died, she was again scared for her life. So, like, since she was little, she was scared for her life, and so the only thing she had to do was become powerful. And so, like, I don't think like what she did was right, but obviously she did what she had to do to survive, and I can respect that a little bit. So it's like, at first, like, I was just like, when, like, I read this probably like I first read this book when I was like my last year in college. I just picked it up off of in a book when I saw it in the bookstore, because I love going to the bookstore. It's like everywhere I go, I have to go see, oh, there's a bookstore, we need to go check it out. So when I first read it, I was just like, oh, she's the bad person, because I remember there was one time where she some I feel like she was also manipulated with her children too, because she got I feel like she got her children to go after Marguerite de Valois, especially Henry III. Henry III was eventually king after Francois I died. He was at first I think he was king of Poland at one point, but then he came back, and the Polish people thought he was weird too, and like they were just like, oh yeah, he's gay. So, because like there was this dude who was hanging around him all the time, so they were just like, I think he's gay, and because he also had no heir either, so it's just like, I think he's gay. They were just like, I think he's gay because he never sleeps with his wife either. So Henry III came back, and they just tried so hard. She just manipulated her children to not like Marguerite either. And like there was this one scene in the book where the author described them, because they thought Marguerite had sex before marriage, so they started hitting her, and they started ripping her clothes off. And so I was just like, so the young me was just like, oh my god, that's so mean. Catherine Medici is so mean. But like, it's just like, but like once older me started reading the book again, it was just like I can understand some of the trauma that Catherine de Medici went through, and now her as a mother, and and she's also trying to protect her children too, because even though she favors Henry III the most, she's trying to protect her child too, because she did everything to try and get Marguerite de Valois married off and because to married off and make sure she stayed in line for the throne, and like, because she didn't have to do that, but obviously she did. And it would just look weird if she didn't do that either, but she did everything she could. I'm not saying that obviously she wasn't the best mother ever, but she did what she could to survive, and what she could for her children to survive. And I can respect that. Marguerite, she did some shady stuff too. Like I saw her, I was like, oh, she's amazing. She's like, because at the end of the book, like when because at the end of towards the end of the book, she had a good relationship with Henry IV, and like I said before, Henry cheated, and like I said, like all other kings at that time, they had mistresses. They would get mistresses pregnant. They would have they would have children with them. So I mean, and she wanted, and Marguerite de Valois was also upset that she didn't marry. She didn't marry for love. She at the end of the episode, at the end of the book, I don't know why I keep thinking it was a TV show. It should be a TV show, because I mean that's one of the reasons I picked it up. I love knowing about scandals in history, the rival queens. Come on. So she did, at the end of the book, she did have a good relationship with her husband. She did give the charity a lot, and at the end, and when she died, there was a huge parade. For her, like, well, ceremony of her, and her body her casket was driven through the road on horseback, and in a chariot or carriage, or whatever it's called. So I was just like, oh, everything worked out for her. She was she was a nice person. Everything. It's like, no, she did some sketchy stuff while she was still alive. I mean, her husband tried to kill her at one point. Um, Henry the Fourth tried to kill her at one point. But I mean, she did some sketchy stuff. Like she'll do anything to not get her. She did everything to not get killed, but she also made people leave their houses, and she would burn she used their houses as barricades for, and it was just like, and so then people of the town were just a little bit, didn't want her there anymore. So like, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one of the shady stuff she's done. But overall, I just really like this book. And it's like, what I have realized is that what this I realized over time by reading a few books that humans, our society just likes labeling stuff. There's good and there's evil, and there's good and there's bad. There's right and there's wrong, and it's just like, it's not all black and white. And the reason why we label stuff is because we, at the end of the day, we want control. We want to see what we want to know that we are in control, and that's one of the reasons why we label stuff. But at the end of the day, good and bad, there's always going to be a gray area. Like Catherine de Medici, she wasn't in the beginning, she wasn't bad, but just the trauma that she had to go through made her seem like a witch with a capital B. But Marguerite du Valois wasn't the saint of France. So it's like, we can't always think, oh, I'm a good person, but then you go, well, you know what, I'm just gonna do this because I think I should do it. And it's like, because you don't know if you're a good no one really knows if you're a good person or not. It's just you try to go through life the way you go through life, and sometimes the things that we think are good can be deferred. And if you like, I don't like the laws. I mean, like, we can't, in some countries, like, you can't carry around a permanent marker. And so, like, because I'm an American, and I'm just like, and I heard that law, and I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. But I mean, it's permanent marker, so you could draw on it and it would just stay there. You draw on it, or deface a mural or something, and it would stay there forever. Again, in some places you can't carry pepper spray. I would be like, why can't I carry pepper spray? Because if someone attacks me, I have pepper spray. Although you can carry hairspray, so that also stinks too. But I don't know about, like, why would you want someone to spray hairspray in your eyes? But thankfully I've never had to use either of them on anyone. So it's that, and like, that's what this book, and there are a few other books too that has helped me realize, like, good and bad are not always good and bad. There's the author didn't necessarily paint Catherine Medici to look like a terrible person, and she didn't paint Marguerite de Valois as the saint that, or like the best woman to ever live. I mean, there are always going to be a difference of opinions for everyone. There are always going to be different outlooks on life, and we can't always judge someone, but we are going to judge them. We can't always judge someone because what we see that person do. I mean, saying that you're a good person doesn't always mean you're a good person. Because I know plenty of people who are not a good person, but would say, but like if I ask them generally, they would say they're a good person. But it's not necessarily if you're good or or a bad person. Because I mean, there are people who know, like, yeah, I'm not a good person. Like, there are some people who know who are comfortable with saying I'm not a good person, and I know that I'm not a good person, and I like it that way. Who are, again, just witches with a capital B. Like, I would, if you ask me, I would say I'm a good person, but in some instances, I'm not a good person. I try not to be a bad person, because I try not to treat people terrible, because one, I try to put myself in other people's shoes, and two, I just don't want to be labeled as someone like, oh, watch out for that person, they might do that thing, and we don't want that. Because I want to interact with other people, and I don't want other people to be afraid of me. So I try to be a good person, and I like to acknowledge, and a good person acknowledges that they have flaws. And they try, and a good person would work on those flaws if they notice that they have flaws. And that's one of the things that this book taught me as I read it the second time. Because I just feel like, and that's the thing too, there was another book I read about, another book that had to do with war, and it's just like, I forget what book that it was about a war. I think it was the rape of Nanking. But it's just like, the Japanese were just as much were victims. I feel like the Japanese were also victims of their violence just as much as the Chinese were, because they lost their humanity just as much as the Chinese lost. And I'm probably, if a Chinese person sees this, I'm probably gonna get some backlash. They're like, how could you? But I feel like it's true that war doesn't benefit anyone. But I mean, war is also a black and white situation. No cause is necessarily good. No cause is necessarily bad. I don't think, because like, how would you know? Oh, it's a bad person that does something good. What's the difference between a good person who does things that are bad? See, it doesn't make any sense, because what are the things that constitute a bad person doing good things? How many things does a bad person need to do to be good? How many things does a good person need to do before they turn bad? See, so it's just all in the eye of the beholder. So and that's my thoughts on this book. And it just opened up a whole new discussion of what I thought about everything. And I even wrote about the rape of Nanking. It wasn't like, I didn't write it for my final project or anything, but I wrote about it. It was I don't know what it was. I just wrote about it, and yeah, that was one of the things I said, that like this book and the the Nanking book just opened my eyes on like how humanity is it's very complex. Again, there's no good and there's no bad. It's just what are we doing with our life? Know what you're doing and know what you're getting into, because as it's not it's not as it's not right in front of it's not as in front of you as you want it to be, because like once you start going into something, there's going to be more and more layers that you have to get past. So you think it's going to be an easy problem to solve, but then when you keep going, you keep getting more into it, a situation has a lot more courses it could take. So you have to choose the right one that because like again, right and wrong is complex too. So you have to choose the right one, the right path that you would is suitable for you. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Bye.